So you are discussing this beautiful section, Sthitaprajna. So we covered 2.54, where Arjuna is asking, Ka bhasha kim prabhaseta kim asit vrajeta kim. And then in 55, Krishna speaks general symptoms. 56, 57, Krishna answers Ka bhasa kim prabhaseta, which mainly Krishna talks about the thought process, how one thinks, and mainly in dual situation. And then 58 to 63, Krishna he talks about Kim Asita. When that Krishna says that how one has to withdraw his senses like a tortoise, but artificially one cannot withdraw his senses, so there is a great need to have higher taste for a sustainable sense control. Senses are so strong that they are very powerful, and without higher taste, even a person in knowledge can be distracted by the senses. And then 62 63, Krishna says that how if one is not very careful to take up to spiritual life, then he cannot avoid falling down to sinful life. So Krishna consciousness is not only a need to have spiritual happiness, but is also a necessity to avoid sinful life. So in that reference, we saw the text number 62 63. Also before that, we saw that how Krishna says that we have to withdraw senses and we have to cultivate higher taste. So both are austerity for a sadhaka. But a sadhaka still is ready to go through this austerity, and he should have this attitude of austerity. And then gradually he is purified and then they become easy. So we should not think in terms of what I like or what I don't like. A sadhaka has to come to a level what is right, what is wrong. So instead of getting swayed away by mental emotional feelings, what is like or what is dislike, sadhaka sees from Guru Sadhu Shastra what is right or what is wrong. Sometimes doing wrong may be pleasurable, but doing right may be miserable. But still, a sadhaka takes a decision to go for right because that is pleasing to Krishna and that will help him to be purified. So sometimes it may happen that doing wrong is giving more pleasure. Also, we saw that how sadhaka chooses spiritual discipline of this austerity, which may appear as miserable in the beginning, but is giving happiness in the end. And those who are conditioned living entities, they may choose pleasurable sense gratification, which may appear happiness in the beginning, but it is misery in the end. So one has to experience misery in both cases. But in case of sense gratification, he gets a temporary pleasure in the beginning, and then there is endless misery, which will keep him in the cycle of birth, old age, disease, death. Whereas in case of taking to Krishna, there is a pain in the beginning, but then there is endless happiness. So sadhaka has to choose whether he wants to surrender his life to Shreyas or Preyas. That is his. So that is why Jiva Goswami says sadhaka should be on intellectual plane, so that he's not driven more by the mind in terms of what I like, what I dislike, and how he can be on an intellectual plane. One is being surrounded with devotees. The devotee will help him to be on the spiritual plane, and also by constantly being in touch with the sound vibration and the scriptures, then he can be on the spiritual plane. Also our dhyato can also be in this direction, what we are reading, what we are hearing, and then we can be on the spiritual plane to analyze, to understand. uh, those who are student in a spiritual life, they should take great delight in going in the depth of the subject matter which is mentioned in the scriptures. Why Krishna is speaking like this, why senses are so difficult, and what it means to withdraw the senses, what it means to have a higher taste. So a sadhaka should go deep into the subject matter so that he can analyze, understand, absorb himself, and then he can be on an intellectual plane. Otherwise, we see mind and the so-called feelings of like and dislike, they only drive away, and then we are caught up in these feelings. So now, text number 2.64 to 2.72. So now 2.64 is the answer to this question. Vrajeta Kim. So Kim Asit is done till 2.63. So now Vrajeta Kim means how does he engage with the senses? Because being in the material world, we cannot totally deny interacting with the sense objects. So somewhat interactions are required. How Sthitaprajna he interacts with the sense objects. Ragadvesa vimuktestu विषयान् इन्द्रियेच्चरन् आत्मवशयैर्विधेयात्मा प्रसादम् अधिगच्छति. So he's mentioned that how he's free from attachment and he's free from aversion, and he has controlled his senses by following the regulative principles of freedom. And he can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord. Like that. So how does he interact? Neither he become attached nor he is averse. If his guru tells him that you have to stay in a palatial White House, then he will go and stay. He'll not be averse. Are kya hai? I'm a sadhu. How you can ask me to stay in a palatial White House? And if a guru says you go and stay under a tree on the bank of Yamuna, then he'll go and stay there. He'll not be attached. Hare, I was staying in such a nice facility before, and now suddenly I'm thrown under a tree. No, neither is attached to any sense object nor is averse. And Prabhupada was very exemplified this principle. He was neither attached nor averse. So much he got, he engaged in Krishna's service. But he never became attached also. When Bhuvaneshwar Prabhupada was going and he came to know that Gaur Govind Maharaj is staying in a small hut, by then he was Acharya. But then devotees told Prabhupada will arrange a good guest house for you. Prabhupada said, no, I want to go and stay with my son. So that is His Holiness Gaur Govind Maharaj. Prabhupada preferred to stay in a hut, small hut. Even in Vrindavan, whenever Prabhupada would go before ISKCON came, he would stay in that room only, Radha Damodar. When we go now, it is very small room, no? Very small room. Nothing is there in one way. It's like, I think similar to our preacher's room or more smaller than that also. Yeah, no? More smaller than that also. And very small kitchen, very like, very too small kitchen. So as Acharya also he would stay there only. Because he was not attached. He was happy that I'm staying. This is the most important place in the universe. Prabhupada would feel because they are Rup Goswami, Bhajan Kutir, Samadhi, Ji Goswami's deities. So this is how a devotee is. So basically, without attachment, without aversion, he engages in the senses. In Quraysh life, it comes that once he was going by, and one father was shouting at a girl that how unfortunate I am, you are Maglik, and I cannot get you married to any boy because within 1 year of his marriage he will die, and I cannot keep you unmarried also. At the same time, I cannot marry you also to anyone. And what can I do? Better you go and you kill yourself. So this was overheard by Quraysh, and Quraysh says I'll marry. And the father was surprised. He says, you don't know, you will die. He says, no, you get married. And then he was married. 1 year passed, nothing happened to Quraysh. Then the father went to Quraysh. Hey, what happened? Why nothing happened to you? Quraysh says, I married your daughter not for enjoyment. but as a service to protect her life. So see, he was never attached. He was never attached like that. About Sankasandas Adhikari Prabhu, he was told by his authority at that time, you get married. So he got married. But he was telling in a lecture, and his wife also was there, that you can ask my wife, I have never touched her. My lord, बहुत मुश्किल है ना. Both of them, they get up early in the morning, and both are very transcendently situated. Wife also is very special. Husband also is very special. So this is this particular shloka. Kim Varjet. How does he interact with the sense object? He interacts for service of Guru and Krishna. If Guru wants him, like same way Kardamuni was requested by Brahma to populate. And he got Dehuti, but he never was attached to Dehuti. And then Dehuti told, I want a son. He gave a son, and then he told, now I'm going. Dehuti told, but who will enlighten me? I got cheated. I had association of such a great person like you, but I never took advantage of your association. So don't worry, the child, he will enlighten you. And he went. Like they, because they have this. So actually, they are not bound by karma also. Krishna says it is not action which binds, it's selfish interest behind the action that binds. So Arjuna, in one way, was fighting a big war. He was killing so many people, but he was not bound. Duryodhan, although he was losing the battle, but he was getting more and more bound by karma. Because he was fighting for his selfish interest, and Arjuna was fighting for pleasure of Krishna. Another beautiful point in this verse comes is anyone who interacts with the sense object in this way, he gets complete mercy of the Lord. So, in one way, actually, it is a platform where one has developed service attitude. Then only he can act in this way, where he sees everything belonging to Krishna, and with due respect, he engages them in Krishna's service. He does not consider any of these things made for his enjoyment. And naturally, such a person becomes a recipient of Krishna's mercy. To the extent person identifies, to the extent person becomes attached, to the extent person wants to exploit, to that extent, then Krishna cannot give him mercy, because in one way he's trying to separately, independently enjoy from Krishna. So then Krishna says, how I can help him now. So this is a very great platform where one is like that. Janan Prabhu, in one way, he joined ashram, but then there was uh, no money in the temple, and then they were thinking what to be done. So he started driving a taxi, although he was a mechanical engineer, not in India. Mechanical engineer in India, they become nowadays Flipkart selling boy also. And that too, not now. Those days to become a mechanical engineer in India also was very great. What to say of being in the West? That's what. But point is, he took up to such a menial service of driving a taxi. That too in the West, where he could have such amazing opportunities, and whatever money would come, everything he would give to Prabhupada. That Prabhupada, this is your, like that. Same way his origin is Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj. Whatever salary would come, he would give to Prabhupada. So this is no attachment, no. And it is not they became attached to driving that. And Prabhupada told enough, now come out, they came out. Like that. So actually, we see Prabhupada disciples also, they exemplified that how they did what Prabhupada wanted for pleasure of Prabhupada. Like that. So then such a person will not be bound by karma also, and will receive the mercy of the Lord also. But it is not easy. It is difficult. But we have to come to this level gradually, eventually. Then will not be affected by the negative aspect of sense objects also. When we identify, become attached, then we are affected by the negative aspect of sense objects. But when we, in a detached way, when we use them in service of the Lord, then we are not affected by the negative aspect of the sense object. See, in one way, Prabhupada was really dealing with so much money, but we don't see Prabhupada having insomnia. We don't see Prabhupada having some problems, right? Why? Because he was not getting affected by the negative aspect, because he was knowing that it is Krishna's money, and he was using that Krishna's money in the Krishna's service. So he was least affected by it, like that. Mhm. Vishwanath Thakur is saying, one whose mind is submissive, he who engages in the sense objects with the sense freed of attachment to repulsion under the control of the mind attains peace. Baldev Devbhushan is telling that Krishna is saying, one whose mind is offered to me, even though he enjoys the sense objects with the senses, freed of attachment and repulsion, under the control of the mind, attains a pure mind. Like that. Hmm? He's telling one whose mind is offered to me, even though he enjoys the sense object with the senses freed of attachment repulsion under the control of the mind, attains a pure mind. Basically, he's also engaging the senses. He's not attached. He's not repulsed. Like that. So in the Vedic time, actually, it is like a matter of contemplation. How they were so pure. Even activities like producing a child, they could do in an attitude of service. Very difficult. But they had that, they would do Garbhan Samskar, they would take permission from Guru, and then they would pray to the Lord, then, divine child would take birth, like that. It is already explained that one may externally control the senses by some artificial process, but unless one engages in the service of the Lord. Then Prabhupada is saying, although the person in Krishna consciousness may appear to be on a sensual plane, but because of his being Krishna conscious, he has no attachment to sensual activities. The Krishna conscious person is concerned only with the satisfaction of Krishna, nothing else. Therefore, he is transcendental to all attachment and detachment. If Krishna wants, the devotee can do anything which is ordinarily undesirable. And if Krishna does not want, he shall not do that which he would have ordinarily done for his own satisfaction. Therefore, to act or not to act is within his control, because he acts only under the direction of Krishna. This consciousness is the causeless mercy of the Lord, which the devotee can achieve in spite of his being attached to the sensual platform. Sthitaprajna is saying that the Lord is answering this question. How does the Sthitaprajna go? Vrajeta kim? The Lord explains that it is not a fault to accept the object of the senses if it is done with controlled senses, with absence of attachment of the objects in the mind. According to Amarakosha, Vidya means submissive, situated in words, compliant, controlled, well behaved, polite, and equal. One whose mind is submissive to the instructions, who contact object with senses controlled by the mind, senses devoid of attachment repulsion, attains peace. So basically, if one's mind is submissive to the instructions, basically he acts as per Guru, Sadhu, Shastra, and that mind becomes very peaceful, and he's not getting driven by attachment or repulsion to sense objects. More identification is with sense objects, more agitation happens in the mind. But when mind is submissive to the authority of Guru, Sadhu, Shastra, then mind attains peace. So one who is on this platform, he is engaging the senses or being away from them. Both are good, because he is not affected by them. If he is engaging them senses, good service will happen. If he is not engaging, then also he is peaceful, happy, like that. So Baldev Vidyabhushan is saying that previously the Lord said, externally one may try to have these senses under control, but if mind is not offered to Krishna, it is a failure. But that person who has a controlled mind, mind which is offered to me, or which is submissive to me, through which he finally achieves destruction of the impurities of the mind, such as attachment to pleasure, though enjoying the forbidden sense objects such as sound by the senses such as ear, but which are devoid of attraction, repulsion, and which are dependent on the mind, that person finally attains a pure mind. So he's saying that how when a person has a controlled mind means the mind which is offered to Krishna, the mind which is submissive to the instruction of the Supreme Lord, then he is not affected by the attachment or repulsion to the sense objects, and his mind becomes pure, his mind becomes calm, he gets his mercy. So in one way, the purity of the mind is referred to the mercy of the Lord. That mind becomes pure, that is mercy of the Lord. प्रसादे सर्वदुःखानां हानिरस्योपजायते प्रसन्नचेतसो हि आसु बुद्धिः अपरिवतिष्ठते। तो इसमें देखिए स्टार्ट कैसे हो रहा है, प्रसादे सर्व दुखानाम, जिसको प्रसाद मिल जाता है, यानी कि जिसका माइंड प्योर हो जाता है, जिसको भगवान की मर्सी मिल जाती है, द थ्री फोल्ड miseries of the material existence exist no longer. In such satisfied consciousness was intelligence is soon well established. तो इसका मतलब क्या है, जब तक हमारा माइंड डुअलिटी से प्रभावित होगा, तब तक हमारा स्टेबल इंटेलिजेंस नहीं हो पाएगा. But one who has achieved this mercy of the Lord, meaning whose mind has become pure, then these threefold miseries, they will exist no longer. Why? Because he is not attached to anything and he is not detached. He is not repulsive to anything. And his intelligence becomes steady. So Baldev Devbhushan is saying, from this pure mind arises destruction of all distress. Quickly the intelligence concentrated on Atma becomes completely fixed. The intelligence is fixed in its desired goal completely. All distress is destroyed. But because of no desire for enjoying the object, the person accepting necessary object of the senses for his survival has tranquility. He has a peaceful consciousness just because of bhakti. So this goes desire for enjoying the object. So he is accepting the object only for his survival. And he is very peaceful, calm. Without bhakti, one cannot have a peaceful mind. Vyasdev, even though wrote Vedanta Sutra, did not have any happiness of mind, but he gained peace of heart through bhakti taught by Narada. What happens after one attains a pure mind? When the mind of the yogi is pure, there will arise destruction of all the distress caused by contact with the matter. The intelligence of that person whose mind is peaceful, which is directed towards his own Atma, remains fixed. So meaning what? In one way, this section got over in 2.64 only. Right? And in one way, initially Krishna talked about thought process. Then Krishna talked about how he handles the senses which come across, and in that he spoke more in terms of how he controls the senses. And then Kim Vrajeta is actually the highest platform. Krishna is saying, previously I spoke about controlling the senses, but then until mind is pure, there is a chance of failure. But 2.64 person has offered his mind also to Krishna. So 2.64 means is a level where now senses don't disturb him, where he can use the senses as need and he's not attached or repulsed by them. So now from 65 onwards, there is a discussion that what happens to such a person whose mind has become pure. That is discussion from 2.65. So prior verse before this, they are the verses that how there is journey by which mind will become pure. And in the journey, first thing which was told was that one has to work on thoughts, right? Then what was told was that one has to work upon controlling the senses. Then it was told that one has to work upon developing the higher taste. And then it was told one should work upon not having a negative thoughts. Dhyato Vishwan Pumsa. Then mind will become pure. Then Kim Vrajeta Kim, then he can be launched as a preacher. He can take sannyas. And then what will happen to such a person whose mind has become pure? Then that is mentioned. His intelligence will become steady. He will not get affected by the threefold miseries. So this is in one way conclusion. When the mind is pure, then all the distress goes. And intelligence of such a person becomes fixed in what direction? Towards the goal, towards his own Atma. So you see now at this level, intelligence will become fixed. Till then, one has to see. So mainly two things, which are three maybe. That one is one has to work very sincerely on the thoughts. Second is one has to work sincerely on withdrawing uh, oneself from the sense objects and developing a higher taste. So that means till the time mind is pure, one should try to have as minimum sense object as possible. When mind is pure, then he can engage. Yukta Vairagya can happen. But unless mind is pure, he should focus on having minimum sense object because that is a necessity. And when there are minimum sense object, then only in that environment one can have higher taste. At all, at all. A very beautiful point that till the time mind becomes pure, we cannot have steady intelligence. So it all starts with the senses, then from senses it comes to thoughts, then from thoughts it comes to mind, then from mind it comes to intelligence. Like that. So now what has happened is buddhi has become, then what happens? नास्ति बुद्धि अयुक्तस्य
नास्ति बुद्धिरयुक्तस्य
न चायुक्तस्य भावना
न चायुक्तस्य भावना
न चाभावयतः शान्तिर्
न चाभावयतः शान्तिः
अशान्तास्य कुतः सुखम्.
अशान्तस्य कुतः सुखम्.
So one who is not connected with the Supreme can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace. Then how can there be any happiness? So these are kind of concluding verse that this all is possible when one is connected to the Supreme Lord. So that is mentioned as a sense, developing a higher taste. Then only mind will become pure and intelligence will become steady. And then only there is a possibility of peace. And peace after that, happiness. Otherwise, very difficult. So he's saying this verse makes the point by stating the opposite. Like 65 was that this will happen, and 66 is if this does not happen, then don't think about happiness. You will not be peaceful only, what to say of being happy. So, in one way, these 65, 66, they are emphasizing on the same point that how pure mind is necessary for having peace and happiness. And then one can have steady intelligence. Indriyanam hi charatam yanmano na vidhiyate tadasya harati pragyam vayunavam ivambasi. As a strong wind sweeps away a boat on the water, even one of the roaming senses on which mind focuses can carry away one's man intelligence. So this Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur is saying This verse examines the person with no intelligence due to lack of control of the mind. So saying if somebody does not do this, then what will happen? Then what will happen? The senses are so strong and they are like a strong wind which may take a boat in one direction. Any sense object on which mind focuses, it can carry away man's intelligence and then he will fall down. Prabhupada is saying that's why all senses should be engaged in the service of the Lord so that one can have higher taste, pure mind. Among all the senses moving towards the respective sense object, the mind follows after one sense. In this way, a person follows each of the senses. Such a mind takes away the intelligence, just as unfavorable wind takes the boat. Of course. This verse speaks of the faults arising from the lack of sense control. That means not absorbing mind in Krishna. That means his senses will take him off in some other direction. तस्माद्यस्य महाबाहो
तस्माद्यस्य महाबाहो
निगृहीतानि सर्वशः
निगृहीतानि सर्वशः
इन्द्रियाणि इन्द्रियार्थेभ्यः
इन्द्रियाणि इन्द्रियार्थेभ्यः
तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठितः.
तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता.
So now is a conclusion. Therefore, O mighty armed, one whose senses are restrained from their object is certainly of steady intelligence. So after explaining, he is coming to this point that tangibly who can restrain his senses? Who has steady intelligence. So restraining senses, developing higher taste, purifying mind, then having steady intelligence. Now he's concluding that actual sense restraint means having a steady intelligence. Prabhupada again and again will bring same point only in all the purports. That only way to curb the force of sense gratification, only way to purify is to engage the senses in the service of the Lord. So Prabhupada focuses only on the higher taste, higher taste. That will happen by engaging in the service of the Lord. So he's saying, one whose mind is fixed on me can become established in Atma. O mighty armed one, just as you conquer the enemies, you should conquer the senses. From these verses, it should be understood that conquest of the senses takes place spontaneously for the perfected Sthitaprajna. But it will arise from the practice for the person aspiring to attain the state of. So, very beautiful point. No? He's saying that for a perfected being, it will happen naturally. But for us, it will be a practice. We have to create an environment, we have to practice so that we can do this. यनिशा सर्वभूतानां
ज्ञानिशा सर्वभूतानां
तस्यां जागृति संयमी
तस्यां जागृति संयमी
यस्यां जागृति भूतानि
यस्यां जागृति भूतानि
सा निशा पश्यतो मुने.
सा निशा पश्यतो मुने.
This is a beautiful point. Arjuna may say, but whole world is going in one direction, everyone is talking something else, and you are talking something else. People talk about sense engagement, people talk about sense gratification, you are talking about sense restraint, you are talking about giving up sense gratification. People are talking about watching movies, watching cricket, eating all stuff. You are talking about giving up all. So Krishna is saying, you have to decide. These both process or both paths are opposite to each other. The path of sense gratification and the path of Krishna consciousness. So Krishna is saying, what is night for them is day for you. What is day for them is night for you. And it's very true also logically. We sleep by 9 and they remain awake. We get up by 3:30, then they sleep. Right? What they want to do, that we don't want to do. What we want to do, they don't want to. So once Krishna Prabhu had asked to His Holiness Nandanath Maharaj, Maharaj told that how devotee is the best businessman, devotee is the best teacher, devotee like that. Maharaj, one class was there. He told Maharaj how it can be, because we have to chant 2 hours, we have to be with devotees, we have to read Bhagavatam, we have to attend classes, we have to render service. But those who are outside, they are 24 hours into their business. They always are far better than us. Then how you can say that a devotee is the best businessman? Maharaj says, you could not understand Krishna Chandra Prabhu. Best businessman means the one who does business for Krishna. Otherwise, materially, we can never compete with them. Is it not? They'll be like not sleeping only, and they'll be doing all kinds of things to somehow other, go ahead. We cannot do all that. We cannot, because our life is different. Sometimes in competition or college life also, they will be like so voracious in doing some project, drinking something and remaining awake night and somehow completing the project. But we cannot live that kind of life. Keeping Krishna in the center, we do what best we can do, and then we become a best student in eyes of Krishna, like that. So devotee is always best. He's a best son, he's a best father, he's a best husband, he's a best wife, he's a best scientist, he's a best employee, everything. So in your company, whenever some awards will come, you can send your nomination. I am the best employee. What? How? Because I'm doing for Krishna. Like that. So actually, we should not get charmed by them, because we cannot be like them. It is quite natural. सामने डूट जाए, प्रभु जी देखिए उनके कितने दोस्त हैं, मेरा कोई उतने ज्यादा दोस्त नहीं है. No problem. We have to make friends with devotees. We cannot make friends with them because their life is different. Our life is different. कई डॉक्टर, प्रभु जी देखिए विटामिन B12 का कमी हो गया, हम लोग मीट नहीं खाते इसलिए कमी हो गया. बाहर वाले देखो मीट खाते इसलिए कमी नहीं होता है. ठीक है, कमी होने दो. But we cannot take to their path, right? We cannot take to their path. We have to figure out how, what Krishna says in that forum, we adjust ourselves, like that. So we should know that they have different lifestyle, they are different people, and we are different. So we should not get affected. Oh, वो लोग ने ये कर लिया, वो लोग ने ये कर लिया. Let them do. We have to keep Krishna in the center and do what best we can do. It has been stated that for the sadhaka or person practicing to attain the state of Sthitaprajna, controlling the senses is the goal of his efforts. This verse states that for one who has achieved the state of Sthitaprajna, sense control is automatically achieved. So there are two types of intelligence: that fixed on Atma, that fixed on material sense objects. The intelligence fixed on Atma is compared to metaphor to the night for all living entities. That intelligence is like night since it does not manifest the Atma to them. बहुत deep meaning बताया इन्होंने. So for them, their intelligence is fixed on sense objects, right? So that is why that intelligence is like night, because one cannot perceive Atma in that intelligence. But for those whose intelligence fixed on Atma, their intelligence is like day, light, because they can perceive Atma. So that person controlling the senses, however, is awake, not asleep during that night. He realizes the Atma which is to be attained by that intelligence. Other living entities awake with intelligence fixed on material enjoyment experience that material enjoyment. They are not sleeping at that time. That, however, is night for the Muni, the Sthit Pragya. It does not bring about material pleasure for him. What type of person is he? बहुत सुंदर बता रहे हैं ना जहां पर उनको लगता है कि हाँ मुझे सुख मिलेगा वहां इसको लगता है कुछ नहीं है मेरे लिए जहां इसको लगता है कि हाँ मुझे बहुत सुख मिलेगा उनको लगता है अरे क्या है कुछ नहीं है इधर like that. The person directly perceives the Atma also experiences the indifference and the sense objects which come to him by prarabdha karma. What type person is he? The person directly perceiving the Atma also experiences the indifference, the sense objects which come to him by prarabdha karma. So he's saying this person, even though sense objects they come because naturally they'll come as per prarabdha karma, but he is indifferent to them. Like opportunity to enjoy also will come, resources also will come, but he is indifferent. So basically, he is not seeing that there is happiness there. In that sense, it is night for him, and it is night for them in that sense. Whereas for spiritual activities, he sees that there is a lot of happiness. This is one thing. Second thing is when it comes to sense enjoyment, he is very inactive. कुछ नहीं चाहिए. But when it comes to spiritual life, he is very active. On the contrary, materialist, when it comes to sense gratification, he is very active. When it comes to spiritual life, he is very inactive because that is night for him. Night represents inactivity, day represents activity, like that. So in our case also, what we are more enthusiastic for, that will decide which direction we are moving. So if you are more enthusiastic for chanting, reading, hearing, serving, and we are not enthusiastic for material sense gratification, that means we are becoming Sthitaprajna. So he is giving this example. One who sees Atma does not experience the taste of other object, like a dancing girl who pays full attention to the pot balanced on her head. So, जैसे एक स्त्री डांस कर रही है और उसके ऊपर पॉट रखा हुआ है, तो भला है कितने भी विषय वस्तु उसके आसपास रहेंगे, उसका ध्यान कहाँ रहता है कि पॉट ना गिरे. तो वैसे भक्त का ध्यान रहेगा कि ऐसे भक्ति में लगा रहूं. ही इज सो केयरफुल अबाउट भक्ति. अपने समय का दे रहे हैं ना. अप्रियोमानानम् अचल प्रतिष्ठम् समुद्रम् आपः प्रविशन्ति यद्वत् तद्वत् कामायं प्रविशन्ति सर्वे स शान्तिमाप्नोति न कामकामी. So he's telling what happens in such a person. His desire to practice Krishna consciousness becomes oceanic, and all other desires they are like rivers. So when all other desires they enter into this oceanic desire, which he has to be Krishna consciousness, he is indifferent. He does not much come to know. He just eat as a matter of eating. He sleeps as a matter of sleeping. But for us what happens? Our desire to enjoy is oceanic, and our desire for Krishna consciousness is like rivers. So they are lost in that ocean. So we chant as a matter of chanting, but nothing much happens like that. Okay, we have to complete today. In a sense, that is there. Vihaya kaman yah sarvan pumam charati nisparaha nirmamo nirahankara sa santim adhigacchati. These are concluding verses only, that he gives up all desire for sense gratification, lives free from all desire, free from sense of proprietorship, and is devoid of false ego. He attains real peace. So he has become now pure devotee. Correct? So he has no desire to enjoy, no false ego, no proprietorship, and only wants to serve Krishna. Last verse. E.S.Y. ब्राह्मी स्थित पार्थ
Yeshyami Sthitaprajna
Nenam prapya vimuyati
vrajeta vimuyati
Istevasyam antekalepi
Sthitaprajna
Brahma nirvanam rachati.
Brahma nirvana gacchati.
That is the way of the spiritual and godly life, after attaining which a man is not bewildered. If one is thus situated even at hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of God. तो ये है भक्ति करने का तरीका, ये है भक्तिमय जीवन, जिसको प्राप्त करने के बाद आप कभी भी भटकोगे नहीं और मृत्यु के समय पर भी आप इसी चेतना में रहेंगे और भगवान के धाम चले जाएंगे। हरि बोल। So this verse concludes the topic. Brahmi means that which gives attainment of Brahman. Even at point of death, what to speak of one of young age, by this practice attains Brahma Nirvana. Having presented very clearly Jnana and Karma and indirectly Bhakti, this chapter is called Sutra of the Gita. This is commentary on the second chapter of Gita for the joy of the devotees' minds, following after the great devotees. This verse praises the state of Sthitaprajna. This state enables one to attain Brahman. Even in the last part of life, the final years, what to speak of during youth, that Sthitaprajna attains Brahman, the Lord, who is form of deathlessness and bestows that to Sthitaprajna. But how does one situated in Pragya attains Brahman, the Lord? He can be attained only by bhakti. Because the state of Sthit Pragya is caused by bhakti and also brings about bhakti to the Lord, it is said to be the cause of attaining Brahman. A person will become a jnani remembering the Lord by performance of niskam karma. To do otherwise creates only obstacles. This is the essence of the second chapter. Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.